Today, a Labour minister made himself look like a right plonker.
I see that Nigel Farage is already saying that he's going to overturn these laws. So, we have people out there who are extreme pornographers, peddling hate, peddling violence. Nigel Farage is on their side. Make no mistake about it, if people like Jimmy Savile were alive today, he'd be perpetrating his crimes online. And Nigel Farage is saying that he's on their side.
Peter Kyle, a name that you might get in trouble if you slightly mispronounce it. But anyway, said that Nigel Farage was on the side of people like Jimmy Savile. Nigel Farage has demanded an apology.
I've asked for an apology. We're not going to get one. So, Mr. Kyle, can I have an apology, please?
Firstly, thank you very much, Peter Kyle, for opening up the Jimmy Savile door for me. If only we knew someone who was in a position to prosecute Jimmy Savile whilst he was still alive. Say, oh gosh, I don't know, like the Director of Public Prosecutions or the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. Oh, wait, we do know him, don't we? And his name is Sir Keir Starmer. When Boris Johnson said this in 2022...
Leader of the opposition, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Speaker. He spent most of his time prosecuting journalists and failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile, as far as I can make out, Mr. Speaker.
Sir Keir Starmer said that was a ridiculous slur. I mean, look at his face. I don't know if we can show that again. Look at that. Oh, gosh. Well, now he's happy for one of his own ministers to say that Nigel Farage is on the same side as Jimmy Savile. But, look, Peter Kyle kept digging. He tweeted, if you want to overturn the Online Safety Act, you are on the side of predators. It's as simple as that. Well, unfortunately for Peter Kyle, the facts are that since coming into force, the Online Safety Act has blocked and restricted content that the Act wasn't designed for, like immigration or detail about the Pakistani rape gangs. And there it is, isn't it? There it is. It's a bit rich for Labour politicians to start claiming to care about kids now, isn't it? They didn't want a national inquiry into the Pakistani rape gang scandal, which happened overwhelmingly in Labour-run towns and cities. The industrial rape of young working-class white girls. And I can't remember hearing a single one of them complaining about a hotel full of illegal immigrants being too close to a primary school. Why is it people on the left turn up to counter-protest when concerned mothers are outside a migrant hotel after an asylum seeker is alleged to have sexually assaulted a minor? And a lot of people on the left seem perfectly content for children to be taking puberty blockers and set on a pathway to having their genitals removed. In fact, LGBT plus Labour wanted to continue to allow puberty blockers for children. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because on the patrons section of LGBT plus Labour is Peter Kyle. Yes, Peter Kyle is on there. Now, I don't know if he's personally in favour of banning puberty blockers for kids. He might not be. I don't know. But LGBT plus Labour certainly were. Well, I hate to say it, but it's comments like these.
And it firmly places Nigel Farage on the side of predators and paedophiles and not on the side of keeping children safe.
That makes you normal man and woman on the street think that our leading politicians are low IQ, intellectually inadequate, over-promoted idiots who are fundamentally unworthy of our respect. The Online Safety Act is an attempt to censor speech. If it was just about protecting kids, why has Starmer set up a task force to track things online, about chatter about immigration? Look, the left have realised that they can't silence people by calling us far-right anymore. So they've moved on to saying that people are on the side of sex offenders and paedophiles instead. I think that Peter Kyle should be very careful about doing that. Let's get thoughts from our panel this evening. We have got columnist and broadcaster Esther Krakow. We have got the Daily Express's superstar, Christian Cowgie. And we've also got journalist and broadcaster Jonathan Liz. Look, Christian, I'll just start with you with your senior political head-on when it comes to this. The Peter Kyle, Nigel Farage incident there. Why has Peter Kyle decided to say that Nigel Farage is in some way, on the side of Savile and paedophiles?
Well, I think essentially it was what we might in Westminster call a dead cat strategy. You whack something so shocking down on the table that people stop talking about other things that you may not want to talk about, and Peter Kyle gets to have a big argument about the merits of the online safety bill. The problem is twofold. Firstly, I and people I've spoken to inside Reform think this will massively play into their hands. They think most ordinary voters will think the argument is absurd, and it's so absurd and offensive, it smells like Labour are trying to cover up some very legitimate arguments against the Online Safety Act.
Yep.
And the other point is, OK, fine. If Labour want to start talking, having political debates in these terms, in this tone, fine, it will backfire. We remember what happened, as you rightly pointed out, when Boris Johnson made similar, actually albeit better founded allegations connecting Keir Starmer's record at the CPS and Jimmy Savile. We remember how Labour kicked off. In fact, I found a tweet just this morning, Peter Carl basically saying that Boris Johnson had incited a riot
Did
against
he call for him
Keir
to resign
Starmer.
by any chance?
I didn't find that, but
well,
he
normally have,
obviously
haven't they?
plenty of other senior Labour politicians did. And if the gloves are off, then so be it, because I think that means that we can say whatever we want without legal repercussion. And I'm sure your lawyers will be nervous, but I personally, fine,
Look,
bring it on.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, that was the first thing. When I woke up this morning, I was immediately confronted by a clip of Peter Carl saying what he said about Jimmy Savile and Nigel Farage. And I thought, if you really want to open that Savile door, then fair play. But he's stupid for doing that, surely, Jonathan?
Yeah, it's not something I would have suggested, and I think it was a very foolish move to make. I suspect that Christian's right, that it will backfire on Labour because, look, I loathe Farage's politics, as you know. I have no truck with him whatsoever, but I don't think that he's on the side of paedophiles and predators for opposing a bill which is opposed by many factions on the left and the right. And I think we have to also remember that this is a bill that was drafted and legislated for by the Conservatives, not by Labour. So this is a Conservative bill. So this is not a left-right issue. And I think there are very, very legitimate oppositions to the bill. And I think that it has actually gone too far in clamping down on free speech.
I'll come back to the Starmer-Savile issue with you in a second, but for me, the overwhelming thing there is that if Labour are going to try and push this line now that this is all about protecting the kids, it's about protecting the kids, well, I'm sorry, I think they can swivel, because I've just rattled off a few cases there where I don't think they were about protecting kids at all.
Well, this is the thing. They cannot sling mud if their record is not spotless. And Labour are not known for being the champions of children's safety, especially in the last year alone about this debacle with the Pakistani rape gangs and how they handled it. And unfortunately, this is why the language that they use, they have to be very, very careful about it, because when you boil down this issue of giving the Secretary of State such vast powers over what basically can be seen on the internet and what can't, you can't then say anyone opposing this is on the side of Jimmy Savile. I mean, come on, that's ludicrous. Like, people, free speech is... There's someone, Lucy Connolly is currently serving 31 months in prison. You cannot say to people that... individuals that are concerned about where free speech is going in this country are choosing to side with paedophiles, especially given Labour's record. That's just not acceptable.
I actually just honestly think it's up there with like the worst things you can ever say about anyone. Is that they're on the side of paedophiles.
Well, how does it get worse than being a paedophile?
Well, yeah,
there's that.
Being on the same team as the paedophile.
Well,
I mean,
exactly.
you mentioned Lucy Connolly. I mean, why is she in prison? Because of so-called incitement to violence. Now, what do Farage's attract? I mean, if they're going to see this as a red rag to a bull, they're going to think, oh well, if a cabinet minister's saying that Nigel Farage is basically, mates with paedophiles, then where does it stop? I mean, I could mention the fact that Peter Carl has been in multiple selfies with Ivor Kaplan, a former Labour MP who got done in a paedophile sting last year. I mean, what does that say? I mean, do we start drawing sentences?
I think that's an active case, so we don't want to... I don't know how Ivor Kaplan is pleading. He may be pleading not guilty.
If libel no longer exists, then all bets are off.
Yeah, well, I think crucially for the sake of this show, it does still exist. I want to make very clear, I think that's an active case and we don't want to assume any guilt there. However...
Well, how many times was Trump photographed with Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, the photograph of someone doesn't necessarily...
All right, well, let's put ourselves on from that. Just returning to the Keir Starmer-Jimmy Savile issue here, right? So... Keir Starmer's quite successfully swerved a lot of serious scrutiny for this by people thinking that it was actually a very unpalatable thing to say, that when he was Director of Public Prosecutions and Head of the Crown Prosecution Service, that perhaps, maybe, he could have done a little bit more to at least be across the detail of how that Savile investigation was going in the first year of his time there in those roles. And that kind of all went away for him. Well, now it's back, isn't it? And maybe he should have done a bit more. He likes to claim responsibility for everyone who was prosecuted. So what about the people that weren't?
Look, there were There were numerous reports about this when Boris Johnson made it a political football, and that was widely condemned across the political spectrum. Actually, a lot of Conservatives found it incredibly distasteful. In fact, one of Johnson's most loyal sort of officials, Munira Mirza, resigned over it. She could have resigned over many things before that. She resigned over that at the time. And the fact remained that Starmer didn't have any sort of oversight over that prosecution. And then he actually commissioned a report into what had gone wrong, and he was absolved of any blame in that. So
who marked that report, though?
Well, he marked it.
Yeah, who conducted that report? 'Cause I think was it not the lady who worked for Keir Starmer?
I think it was
Alison Levitt.
Alison Levitt, yeah.
Who worked? Did she not work for Keir Starmer?
Well, I mean, look, he commissioned a report. It wasn't.
But it's just interesting, isn't it? Because that's quite Keir Starmer's style, isn't it? I need to buy myself a bit of time here. I'm going to commission a report. Well, then I'm going to hide behind that report.
This is before he was a Labour MP. Before he was.
But it's quite radioactive. I mean, I think he had his sights on politics, and if he had that stain on him, he probably wouldn't have made it anywhere near Corbyn, let alone leader of the Labour Party. And look, I do appreciate that in that report he was absolved. Whatever way.
By the way, that was. Oh, sorry. Just to cut across, I want to make very clear on this. I'll come back to you on there. That was Alison Levitt, who was the chief principal advisor, I believe, principal legal advisor to Keir Starmer. Yeah. So she's done it. She's done that report.
Whatever
you'd
weight
be gutted, wouldn't you? You'd be gutted, wouldn't you? Like if my producers here were asked to conduct a report into my conduct, and they all found against me.
Actually,
I'd be absolutely mortified.
The vast political consensus and the legal consensus at the time was that Starmer had not done anything wrong. There are so many things that you can criticise Starmer for. I don't believe this one of them.
There was that consensus, but we also know that Keir Starmer said when he was campaigning to be Labour leader that at the CPS he took credit for the things that went right and he took blame for the things that went wrong on his watch. And one of the things that went wrong was the CPS failing to charge Jimmy Savile. So by his own words, he is, if not personally responsible as head of an organisation. And by the way, politically...
he was head of the CPS when it happened.
Politically...
You can say the buck stops with him.
You can do. The same way a minister is responsible if a civil servant
doesn't mean he's somehow enabling Jimmy Savile.
But the point is politically that this issue still comes up unprompted in focus groups. So why? Why did Peter Kyle mention it when the words Jimmy Savile and British politics are most closely associated with this issue?
That leads me perfectly on to my next point, Esther, which is when you see someone like Peter Kyle do that, and I don't want to have a go at the guy for getting into the University of Sussex at the third attempt. I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to do that. Honestly, I wouldn't. Hey, no, that would be really mean. That would really mean.
He had a lot of trouble.
Okay, fine, but we really mean to do that. But it's no. I'm sorry, but when you see him politically speaking, saying things like this, I think it's a lot of people out there watching now would have thought, gosh, are we being led by people who are quite low IQ on this stuff, Esther?
Well, they're just... Keir Starmer's cabinet, I almost feel a little bit sorry for him because I think the pool he had to choose from was abysmal. They are educators at the Hilt, many of whom went to study history at Cambridge or PPE at Oxford, and they're very not on the ball. They're extremely mediocre. I mean, David Lammy is one of them, who will forever be one of the national embarrassments of the UK as Foreign Secretary. But this is not a mistake that a minister should have made in government. This is not... Even if you accept that Keir Starmer bears no personal responsibility for how the Jimmy Savile row turns out, you should never put that man's name anywhere near a British politician when you are in government. That's an amateur mistake. From
years of covering politics, from watching these morning media rounds, knowing how the briefings work, knowing what cabinet ministers are allowed to say and what special advisors think they can get their cabinet minister to say without getting told off by Downing Street, this was pre-planned. There is absolutely no way that Downing Street either didn't let him say it in the knowledge he was going to or tell him to say it as a deliberate strategy.
OK. Well, Jonathan, is there a case that if we zoom out a little bit for the more sensational stuff, which is obviously, I think we've all agreed really a bit silly, mentioning Jimmy Savile and saying that Nigel Farage and other people on the side of paedophiles and all that. Is there a core point there?
They're on the side of paedophiles, not they are paedophiles.
On the side of paedophiles? On the side?
No one said that people who oppose this are paedophiles.
No, I said on the side.
Right,
no, that's what
I'm
saying. I'm actually trying to ask you about whether or not you think at its core here, although it could have been expressed in much better terms, whether there is a point here about the Online Safety Act at all. Is there at its core, I'm trying to do Peter Kyle a bit of a favour here, right? Is there something there where you think, OK, maybe he's got a point?
Look, I think that there are a lot of the Online Safety Act comes from a good place, which is trying to protect children online. I think that's something that everyone will want to get behind. There is a lot of horrific content online, and you know, when we were kids, well, maybe I'm a little bit older than you, but that was even when I was a teenager. You know, there was horrific stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that's a danger to children, but the way that you go about that has been mishandled, and it's kind of just using analog sort of laws for kind of digital and very, very fast evolving technology.
I think as well, in a world where we're constantly being told to check our language and make sure that everything's all right, I just thought it was a really stupid, daft thing to say, and then to double down on it.
It's also kind of ironic. Like the people that are, for example, protesting about strange men from God knows where coming into hotels in their local neighbourhood, they're concerned about women and girls, especially girls that have strange men loitering outside of their schools. They want to protect their children. But for some reason, Labour has set up a task force to monitor people that may put anti-migrant content online. So who's really trying to protect kids here?
Well, quite. I mean, a lot of people are making that point. All right. Well, there we go. Well, look, obviously Peter Kyle not here to defend himself, and I must say that before I came on air, he appeared to have tripled down on that in an article in the Telegraph. So I think he's still of the mind that has been expressed earlier. But